로스웰 뉴멕시코에 대한 미스터리가 되게 많습니다. 공식 보고에 따르면 로스웰 사막에서 뭔가 추락했었고 군대가 신비한 뭔가를 회수했다고 합니다. 군대 처음에는 우주선 회수했다고 주장을 하는 설명을 발표를 했는데 그 다음에는 다시 나와서 날씨 풍성이라고 말을 바꿨는데요. 다행히도 2017년도에 미국 정부가 UFO의 존재를 인정하기 시작을 하면서 많은 옛날 정부 당국자들은 이미 로스웰 뉴멕시코에서 실제로 일어났던 일에 대해서 솔직히 말하기 시작했습니다.
I'm Richard Doty. I was assigned as a special agent with Air Force Office of Special Investigations at Kirtland Air Force Base. I was a counterintelligence officer at the base. During my time there, my first few months there, I was briefed into a special access program involving the U.S. government's investigation and contacts with extraterrestrial, the visitation of these extraterrestrials to Earth.
I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not constructed by any power on Earth. President Harry S. Truman.
And it started out with a crash at Roswell.
Headline station, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Force has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Roswell's almost become a joke because there's so much myth and narrative around it. But if you look at the Guy Hotel document, it was a field agent sent to J. Edgar Hoover. 3 so-called flying saucers had been recovered in New Mexico. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, but only 3 feet tall. It's become the #1 document viewed on the FBI website after we released this.
Now the craft wasn't more or less over an egg-shaped craft. It wasn't saucer-shaped.
That particular craft, there were some problems with #1, getting it on the flatbed to take it up to Area 51.
The interior craft was, it didn't have any actual levers or flight control systems that we would identify as a flight control system. But they eventually, I think over some time, figured it out. And it was done all by hands. The creatures would put their hands on controls and they'd have this headset on. And this headset would somehow control or help them control the aircraft.
Well, they did discuss the fact that there were bodies. Extraterrestrial bodies, yes.
The creatures were about 4 foot. Some of the creatures were mangled, were heavily injured, and their bodies were torn apart.
There were 4 aliens aboard that thing, and those aliens went to Los Alamos.
And we were told that the extraterrestrial went to Kirtland Field, Kirtland Air Force Base, and then on to Los Alamos.
Two pathologists said there wasn't anything in the anatomy books, there wasn't anything in what our medical schools. They had never seen anything like this.
First I thought it was a child, because it was small. Then I looked at this head though. The head was different, the arms were spindly, the body was gray.
But the creatures were approximately 4 foot. They didn't appear to have any ears.
They only had 2 orifices. They didn't have ear lumps. They had 2 ear canals.
They had an indentation for the nose, very, very big eyes.
The large eyes.
The fingers had no thumbs, just four fingers. Suction devices on their tips of their fingers.
You know, the 4 fragile fingers and the long arm, real short, you know.
Almost looked like they were nude, but they actually had a very thin but tight-fitting suit on.
One was alive, partially alive at the time that this happened.
They died in, I believe it was 1952. But the bodies of the extraterrestrials that were found at the scene were in a deep freeze, placed in a deep freeze, and sent to Wright Pat Field in Dayton, Ohio.
Yes, there have been ET visitation, there have been crashed craft, there have been material and bodies recovered, and there is some group of people somewhere that may or may not be associated with government at this point, but certainly were at one time. They have this knowledge and have been attempting to conceal this knowledge.
Officially, the U.S. government ended its study of UFOs in 1969 because it assured the public there is no proof the phenomenon represents a threat to national security.
But what if these unknown aircraft showed an interest in our nuclear weapons? A group of more than 150 military veterans, missile officers, security personnel, including many who work at the Nevada test site, say they've seen mystery intruders over nuclear facilities.
In advancing this concept,
Vandenberg Air Force Base, California, has become the first aerospace operations center of the Air Force.
They actually photographed the UFO following the missile as it climbed into space and shining a beam on it, which neutralized the missile.
It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead, which is represented by my thumb here. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, and then this thing flies up like this, fires another beam of light, goes around like this, fires another beam of light, goes down like this, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. Now when the lights came on, Major Mansman turned around and looked at me and said, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO."
The idea of any explosion in space by any Earth government was not acceptable to the extraterrestrials, and that has been demonstrated over and over.
How was that demonstrated?
By the destruction of any nuclear weapons sent into space.
A 1.5-stage, 132-ton ballistic device, now fully operational, after an evolutionary background of more than 50 years of powered flight.
Roswell was not the beginning. It was a turning point.
We just dropped 2 bombs on a country. We had a test of that bomb a few months earlier, a few weeks earlier in New Mexico. This probably was observed by these aliens somewhere, whether they were doing reconnaissance back then or how they ever figured it out. So they came here to observe and try to figure out what the heck was that.
At the time of the crash, shortly after the detonation of the first atomic weapons, Roswell was the only nuclear-armed squadron in the world. The underlying theme that connects most of the Disclosure Project case files is the fact that these close encounters tend to occur near our nuclear facilities, suggesting that these visitors are deeply concerned with our hostility and the existential threat that we pose to ourselves and others, once we learned to split the atom.